Hello. Today I'm going to be discussing Greece of Pericles and Gorgo, Athens and Sparta respectively. But before I discuss those two civilizations, I want to touch briefly upon Macedon to serve as a culturally similar foil to compare Greece's effectiveness as a civilization, because Macedon is known in this game as a super civ, a real power civ, like Sumer, like Scythia, but also like Hungary, for example. So Macedon has access to the Basilikoi Paidas, which is a building you add that replaces barracks to your encampment. It gives you 25% science for all the production you do to build a military unit. Early on in the game, you're going to need to build a number of Hetyroi and Hypaspis, so it synergizes very well with what is already a necessity in the game, which is military sovereignty and greatness in war. So you will be getting science faster than other civilizations consequently, and the only downside might be an overproduction of units, but the Basilikoi is actually more effective than campus research grants at producing science for you. So the two units, the Hypaspis and the Hetyroi, are quite effective themselves. You get great general points for building units, such as the Hetyroi, because it is an encampment. You get those points, and you have a incentive, even if you have a late start, maybe turn 50, for your productivity of military units. You have to build the encampment and the Basilikoi first to really get the maximum advantage, and that puts you a bit behind in war making. But once you do that, you will have a lot of units that you're building. You will have 2, perhaps, encampments, and you will have Basilikoi. Therefore, you will get a classical great general. It should be guaranteed. It's like Arabia doing religion, or Russia in this game. So you do have a +5 combat advantage with the great general. And then units like the Hypaspis get bonuses for besieging districts, and there's an additional bonus for adjacencies, as I recall, for Hetyroi. We have the recipe here for a very effective civilization at conquering in the classical era, with Hypaspis that stand up to musketmen in the right conditions as a power unit. And of course, the Hetyroi serving almost like knights of the classical era, a light cavalry unit. Now, they do also have other advantages like eurekas and inspirations when capturing cities that have, campuses or theaters, respectively, stuff like that. Holy sites might be for inspirations. If you conquer a lot of cities, you will be ahead of the game compared to other civilizations in science. At the outset of this game, when these were early civilizations added, Persia and Macedon was the civilization that you would fear. So that pretty much sets the stage for how effective they can be. They can build quadriremes and get boatloads of science, no pun intended. Now we're going to discuss Greece. With all this said about Macedon and the big boots they require Greece to fill, Greece might feel like a bit of a Caligula to you, right? No, I'm going to tell you why Greece is actually a very effective civilization. The key thing with Greece is not their extra wild card, although it is if you're a religion victory person, or it's not their Acropolis, which is actually more limited in some ways than a regular entertainment district, right? No. Simply, their path to victory in the domination victory is the hoplite. The hoplite is like a spearman. A spearman has one maintenance cost, needs you to get to bronze working, which is a couple of technologies down the line from the beginning of the game compared to warriors. And guess what? Warrior has 20 strength. A spearman has 25 strength. So a spearman is a garbage deal. But a hoplite when paired with another hoplite adjacent to it, has 35 combat strength. So when you take the 35 combat strength, that's about on par with a warrior. You may not have access to battle cry, for example, or something that's effective for besieging cities as an upgrade at your disposal. But you do have access to, surrounding enemies, and you get the flanking bonus. And you have a unit on par with the strength of a swordsman available about 18 turns earlier without a Eureka. And this is very practical because deploying your units early is key to winning in Deity Domination, because you need to take those cities before they get up good defenses. And having to wait 18 turns really is inadequate. There are other logistical problems with the swordsman. The swordsman, compared to the hoplite, requires 2 iron or 1 iron with an encampment, and 1 iron to upgrade from a warrior. There is no resource requirement for a hoplite, and a hoplite, moreover, has 1 gold cost. So hoplite's better than a spearman, and a hoplite has abilities that make it stand on its own against the swordsman. Namely, the swordsman requires 2 or 1, depending on the situation, for its upgrade. So you have to upgrade the warrior. It's better in a sense sometimes, if you're Greece, to have the ability just to build hoplites from scratch once you get the technology and rush it, in the same way that Scythia gets their horsemen and they rush them. And once you have that strength, you don't have to worry about whether you have iron, because iron, not having it can be a game reset, a game breaker, RNG screwing you over. But you also have issues of having to go back to your home territory to upgrade, or having to build an encampment when you're using a swordsman and you're trying to build one with only 1 iron. That slows you down in the same fashion that having to wait to get swordsmen as a technology would. So in certain ways, for taking cities down as an analog of anti-cavalry use, the hoplite can be more effective than the swordsman at taking cities, simply put. They share the advantage both of being infantry type units, so in Gathering Storm, they get the advantage of battering rams and siege towers. So single-handedly, this one unit turns a civ you might not even bat an eye at, Greece, into a civ that you can deploy very well as a slow-moving infantry mass that's defensible and very effective, the natural antidote to Scythian horse rushes. I think the gameplay speaks for itself, because I start out on the coast north of the Scythians, who are typically a formidable cavalry-based fighting force. I have the means to contend with them because I have a anti-cavalry bonus, and I have the bonus that the hoplites have, putting me against them around 45 combat strength. So they shouldn't be a problem, but until the time I start rolling out my hoplites, I am rather vulnerable to them if they so choose to attack me. What's more is that I had preferred to focus on one civilization at a time and work my way down to them. I end up doing so pretty effectively because the Sumerians are waging war with India, and they're taking on a city called Agra. So I go north and I eventually wrest it from them, and the Sumerians are not too happy about that. I end up taking a mass of my hoplites and taking on the Sumerians. Their war card does not have an anti-cavalry penalty of 10, so you don't have that wonderful advantage of being able to stymie them with your hoplites. But the combat strength of a hoplite being 36 versus 30, and then you have to add on the Deity handicap, 34, just combining all these units together in one space that I put out, this critical mass is what allows me to win against the Sumerians. to take their cities and have battering rams and I think a siege tower at one point, but more likely battering rams. I managed to take most of their cities. Then I move south. I take a city that the Scythians took, and I engage in war with them. They're rather fierce. I cannot take one of their further south cities. And I managed to wrest Kazan from the Russians. From that point on, I recall taking a city to the west of the Americans, and then I basically hunkered down for the middle game. Then in the middle game, science, and then later on, at the end of the game, or the late part of it, I end up upgrading some of my hoplites to modern day hoplites, according to Civ, anti-tank crews. And these guys perform reasonably well, but it's at a certain point where I have the money to build the bombers and to simply rush modern armor, so the eccentricities of the game kind of boiled down to being the same kind of bomber, modern armor type game that you see in the other playthroughs. Anyway, if you like this video, thanks for watching, and please subscribe.